Seems like yesterday we used to rock the show. I laced the track, you locked the flow. So far from hanging on the block for dough. Notorious, they got to know that life ain't always what it seemed to be. Words can't express what you mean to me. Even though you're gone, we still a team. Through your family, I'll fulfill your dreams. In the future, can't wait to see if you open up the gates for me. Reminisce sometime, the night they took my friend. Try to black it out, but it plays again. When it's real, feeling's hard to conceal. Can't imagine all the pain I feel. Give anything to hear half your breath. I know you're still living your life after death.
Every move I make, every single day, every time I pray, I'll be missing you. Thinking of the day when you went away. What a life to take, what a bond to break. I'll be missing you.
It's kinda hard with you not around. Know you in heaven smiling down, watching us while we pray for you. Every day we pray for you, till the day we meet again. In my heart is where I keep you, friend. Memories give me the strength I need to proceed.
Welcome to another edition of the Great Lakes Divide podcast with Bluebelly Tom Crawford. I'm Ryan Schuling. Heather Frary bringing you the sounds from the Record Lounge into and out of every single podcast that we record. We appreciate their support. They're located on South Washington in the Rio Town Marketplace. That's south from downtown Lansing and I-496. It's on the east side of the street. There's plenty of free parking. You can walk right in and walk right down. The aisles filled with vinyl, the very latest and greatest coming out each and every Friday, including from the Grammy Awards. Those winners from this past weekend featured as well on vinyl. You can search for those, and if Heather doesn't have it in stock, she'll get it for you within 24 to 48 hours, special ordered, and equipment to play the records on. If you no longer have that record player that you grew up with, that phonograph, that stereo, that high fidelity sound that you need from that first pressed record, it's a better sound than you're going to get from a CD or any kind of online podcast, any kind of Spotify sound. That's all digital. That's all compressed. The album is pressed in the factory from that first full recording, and there's no sound like it to this day. That is the best sound you will get, and it will last for the length of that record as well. And you can find it all. Once again, you can look at the all-time greats, all the great classic bands like the Beatles, The Who, Led Zeppelin, on down the line through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and up until today. The widest and greatest and deepest selection of music that you'll find, not only in mid-Michigan, but throughout the state. Heather Frary is connected to other record store dealers in the great state of Michigan. And again, she'll get whatever you need and do it in a relatively short order. That's the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Now, before we get to the basketball action from over the weekend, it included a loss by Michigan once again at home, this time to Illinois as the Fighting Illini sweep the season series with the Wolverines. 64-62 the final. Our own Tom Crawford was there. We'll get to sound from that in just a little bit. Plus, Michigan State's road victory, an important one. They right the ship after the loss at Indiana by earning a win at Minnesota, 70-52, controlling this game throughout. And we'll see what the rankings look like today on this Monday as we record January 27th. And the Big Ten standings still not really sorting themselves out. It's a jumbled mess. We'll break those down in just a little bit, too. But the basketball world, of course, was rocked by the death of Kobe Bryant at the age of 41 early on Sunday morning in Pacific time. I live in the Mountain Time Zone. I got an alert that there was a helicopter accident in California that claimed the life of Kobe Bryant. Now, details were sketchy throughout the day, but what we can tell you now is that a total of 9 people lost their lives at around 9 a.m. Pacific time as Kobe Bryant's own helicopter that he owned, it was a Sikorsky S-76. These are those big corporate helicopters that are generally safe to operate. Departed from John Wayne Airport in Orange County, California. Had clearance to take off. You have to have a flight manifest. There were 9 names on it. Had a pilot who was trained. However, there were conditions in the area near Calabasas where the crash occurred that were not conducive to flying not only planes but also helicopters as well. The LAPD noted that they had grounded their helicopters that morning. Most other air traffic was as well due to light rain and foggy weather. Unfortunately, Kobe Bryant's helicopter did take off, and under those conditions, lost sight of its flight track, tried to get back on. They're still investigating this as we record this podcast today, and the National Transportation Safety Board will determine exactly what the cause of the crash was. Without any further information at this time, we can pass along to you that Kobe Bryant, of course, lost his daughter in this accident as well, one of 4 daughters that he and his wife Vanessa had. She went by GiGi. Her name was Gianna. She was 13 years old and was participating in a basketball league with 2 of her teammates who were also on board this flight, one with both of her parents, another with one of her parents. The pilot as well, basketball coach Christina Mauser, again, one of 9 lives lost on this helicopter fatal flight in Calabasas, California. Kobe Bryant's impact not only on basketball but culture was far-reaching, and that was evident in the tributes that were paid throughout Sunday across not only the sports spectrums but the Grammy Awards themselves, which were held at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. His jerseys, both of them, numbers 8 and 24, highlighted in the rafters, lights shined upon them, and Alicia Keys, who hosted the event, mentioned him by name, the house that Kobe built being the Staples Center, all of his great accomplishments, 5 world championships with the Los Angeles Lakers, Magic Johnson in a tweet calling him the greatest Laker of all time, Juwan Howard simply saying in a tweet that showed Kobe Bryant and his dates, 1978 to 2020, saying, "I don't have the words," and 2 hands praying. David DeJulius, who I believe will be a captain of this Michigan Wolverines basketball team before too long, said the following about his hero, one of them, Kobe Bryant. Quote, "Today is a reminder for us to align our priorities in life correctly and be grateful for all that we have, to live with love, care, and happiness because you don't have forever. It's what makes life so precious. Prayers to the Bryant family and everyone else." For Michigan State's part, the players on the court evidently did not know while they took the court against Minnesota that Kobe Bryant had been killed in this helicopter accident. Head coach Tom Izzo knew, but he chose to keep that information from his players until after the game. And you can see in the television broadcast before Andy Katz interviews Cassius Winston, Tom Izzo pulls Cassius aside to tell him that Kobe Bryant had passed. And you could see Cassius look to him and go, "Kobe?" And Tom Izzo says, "Yes," affirms that. And Cassius said, "Bryant?" And Tom nodded once again, and you could see the look of shock on Cassius's face. And, of course, we know all too well the loss that he has dealt with in the passing of his brother Zach this season. And for players of this age in particular, you're talking about guys now in the year 2020 that are 18 to 22 years old. They were born somewhere between probably 2002 and prior to that 1998. They don't know basketball, the world, without Kobe Bryant in it. Kobe Bryant was the preeminent player of the 2000s in earning those 5 world championships and earning 2 gold medals as well. So Kobe Bryant to this generation is very much like Michael Jordan would have been to mine, or going back even further, maybe Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, going down the line, Oscar Robertson was to Tom Crawford, and putting it in that historical perspective, along with passing the torch from Michael Jordan to LeBron James as that preeminent figure in the NBA, that player that was a lightning rod for support and also for criticism, disdain, teams that played against him. And we can't go without mentioning the fact that there was the sexual assault case right here where I am in Eagle, Colorado, some years ago. That was in 2003 that trial took place. It was settled out of court in a civil lawsuit. The criminal lawsuit was dismissed as the alleged victim in this case, who was 19 years at the time of the incident, refused to testify against Kobe Bryant, despite the fact, again, that there was evidence that a crime had been committed. He admitted later through his attorneys that the incident was not consensual by her account, that he felt it was, that there was a discrepancy there, but this caused him to lose endorsements at a time when he was on top of the world, and this knocked him down. McDonald's dropped him, Nutella dropped him, among others here. He actually changed his number after this as well, from number 8 prior to the incident to number 24 after the incident. So when the full story of Kobe Bryant is told, this will certainly be part of his legacy, but not to deny on the court everything that he achieved and accomplished, the Black Mamba, all of the competitive juices that he was cited for having, the tributes that came in yesterday from Shaquille O'Neal, somebody that he had reconciled with, he had had a falling out with earlier in his career and just post-career. Those two were not on speaking terms, and then they sat down for a documentary, went back and forth.
After the first championship, I'm happy. Matter of fact, in my mind, I'm done. Now I can go do what I want to do. So I'm here, we go to the parade, do that, boom, I jump on a plane, take the family back to Orlando. I'm sitting. Oh, Kobe and them got their first championship. Can they get another one? Right. Will they be known as a Laker dynasty? Can they do it again? Mm-hmm. So, I'm mad. I'm upset. One thing I know I got a guy that's going to be ready. Mm-hmm. So I admit a lot of times I didn't come into camp ready because that's just how I got done. Because my thing is, I don't need to get ready for Duncan. Right. I don't need to get ready. I'll get ready when I get ready. So because I had you, I was able to just chill out in the summer, do what I do.
See, that's what pissed me off. That was it right there. That was.
And those exchanges now ring a lot more deeply with the loss of Kobe Bryant. Phil Jackson, of course, commenting. We mentioned Magic Johnson. Michael Jordan saying he felt like Kobe Bryant was his little brother. Just a very strong cultural impact. We saw it at the Australian Open in tennis, where one of the participants wore a Kobe Bryant jersey. Fans showed up in tribute at the Staples Center. He is an iconic figure in Los Angeles. Bill Plaschke wrote a very powerful testimonial to Kobe Bryant in memoriam for the Los Angeles Times. And again, you get the full impact of what he meant to the world of basketball, the world at large, and pop culture by everything we watched happen and transpire yesterday in the wake of that news. And we bring in Blue Belly Tom Crawford. Tom, you look at this in its entirety, his impact on basketball. He never played the college game. He went right from high school, where he was a phenom early in Philadelphia, became instantly a hit at the pro level. Jerry West saw something in him, orchestrated a trade. I believe Vlade Divac was involved with the Charlotte Hornets, and the Lakers pulled off one of the heists of the NBA draft's history in getting Kobe Bryant in the draft, and he spent his entire career with the Lakers. Your thoughts and reflections on Kobe Bryant, the person and the player?
Yeah, this thing was I didn't realize the impact this would have when I saw the initial notification. I get the same thing sent to my phone, TMZ, and that's a whole other story, the fact that they brought that out before family was even notified, and the LA County Sheriff's Department made their comments about that this morning. But I didn't realize that this would have impact over people who probably have never watched an NBA game in its entirety. This kind of goes back to Roberto Clemente when I was in high school, when he died in San Juan, Puerto Rico, in that plane crash. Maybe Len Bias back in '86, although Len had never played, but just the unfortunate of that. But this was one of those larger than life iconic entities in Kobe Bryant, and what he, you really addressed very well that incident, in the Denver area, and I remember that in 2003. And he's an imperfect being. He has his flaws, but we're all made up of a little bit of good, a little bit of bad, and there's a lot of good in Kobe Bryant. The 5 NBA titles, the fact he was with the same team for 20 years, that's kind of refreshing. An All-Star 18 times, Ryan. That's amazing. 2 Olympic gold medals, and such a very competitive professional athlete, a guy who has tons of talent and tons of work ethic. You don't always get that, and that was Kobe Bryant, let alone as far as what he's done from a philanthropy standpoint. I remember vividly getting involved with Bill Clinton, considering that housing project. So always reaching out to ones of less fortune and to young people and to women. The WNBA and his daughter GiGi. The whole thing has made me numb all day yesterday, all through press pass last night. I can't get it out of my mind.
Yeah, and that speaks again to his impact and the larger-than-life figure that he was for an entire generation of basketball players. And Tom Izzo spoke to that in his post-game interview with Andy Katz. Here's a listen to that.
Tom, I know you wanted to say something about the absolutely unbelievable tragedy of what happened today with the death of Kobe Bryant, his daughter, Gianna, 3 others on that helicopter in Los Angeles.
I know Kobe this much, met him a couple times with Magic. It's just tragic. It's tragic, of course, for the sport of basketball, but just think him and his family and his daughter, and it makes you just realize every day, live each day. And We all got to do a better job of that. But my hat's off to Kobe, an unbelievable competitor, an unbelievable person.
So every single team, be it at the college level, the NBA level, you saw tributes to Kobe Bryant both before the game, right here in Denver, and during the game as the contest was underway. Both teams in the Toronto-San Antonio game ran out the 24-second shot clock, number 24, in tribute to Kobe Bryant. And that was a poignant moment where fans recognized what was happening, why it was happening, the tears that were flowing from the players themselves, from the coaches. You could see Greg Popovich afterwards, typical Pop, and how he might respond to this. And of course, Popovich coached Kobe Bryant on those Olympic teams. He came out and said, "Bad game, we lost, who cares?" Because of the totality and the grandiosity of this moment in losing such a big figure in the game of basketball at such a young age, at 41.
Good game, tough loss, who cares? Most importantly, appreciate you all letting the locker room be tonight. Everybody's pretty emotional about the tragedy with Kobe, and all of us know what a great player he was, but he went beyond great playing. He was a competitor that goes unmatched, and it's what made him as a player so attractive to everybody. That focus, that competitiveness, that will to win. And even more importantly than that, we all feel a deep sense of loss for what he meant to all of us in so many ways, and so many millions of people loved him for so many different reasons.
Now, we could talk about, again, his past, and we did highlight that in this podcast to this point, but what did he do with his life from that point forward? What changes did he commit to make? Now, he had 4 daughters with his wife who stayed by his side throughout all the controversy as well. He raised his daughters, by all accounts, with tremendous amounts of love and care and attention, and focus on the participation of young girls in athletics. And I thought this exchange with Jimmy Kimmel on ABC, this was not that long ago, about his daughter, GiGi, and about his daughters on the whole, people coming up to him and saying, who's going to carry forward your legacy? Well, there never really was a doubt when it came to Kobe Bryant.
Do you think your daughter might want to play in the WNBA?
She does, for sure.
She does?
This kid, man.
Wouldn't that be great?
Dude, man, I'm telling you. The best thing that happens is when we go out and fans will come up to me and she'll be standing next to me and they'll be like, "Hey, you got to have a boy. UNV got to have a boy, man. You have somebody carry on the tradition, the legacy." She's like, "Oh, I got this." You know, boy, for that, I got you. Like, that's right. Yes, you do. You got this.
He was as strong of an advocate for women's sports throughout the latter portions of what would be the end of his life as anybody on the planet. And because of his name and his brand, his impact and his endorsement, he was able to carry that forward. There were some who said that he might be a future commissioner of the WNBA. He was a big proponent and supporter of soccer as well. There was a tribute to him on the soccer pitch for MLS. This is a guy that had very diverse interests. He spoke 3 languages fluently, spoke portions of my mom's native language, Serbian, a big language in basketball. There's a lot of Serbian players in the NBA, as well as looking across the spectrum of all kinds of different cultures. This is a guy that was very well read, very well educated, one of the more intelligent players, just in sheer intellect, to play the game of basketball. He thought it through. You could see him analyze and assassinate players on the court in a figurative sense as the Black Mamba and hit those game-winning shots time after time. And that's why I reflected upon this in both a tweet and a Facebook post. With my brother Nate, I attended Game 5 of the 2004 NBA Finals, the going-to-work Pistons that had the 5-game sweep against the vaunted Los Angeles Lakers. This is a team that had three-peated in the early 2000s. It's a team that would win 5 championships with Kobe Bryant. So for the Pistons to defeat the Lakers, and not only do that, but do it in 5 games, win 3 straight in the middle of that best-of-7 series, all in Detroit, and very nearly sweep, if not for a buzzer-beating three-pointer to tie the game Kobe Bryant hit for the Lakers in Game 2, the only game the Lakers would win that series. The Lakers had Gary Payton, Karl Malone, Shaquille O'Neal, and Kobe Bryant, and unarguably at the time, those were the two best players in the entire association, Kobe and Shaq. Nobody gave the Pistons a chance. That's why that championship meant so much. And for me to witness that firsthand and see the Pistons take down the mighty Lakers, almost all of that had to do with the fact that it was Shaq and Kobe Bryant side by side, that 1-2 punch that somehow David was able to slay Goliath in that particular matchup. And we go back to that year, Tom, 2004. I know you're not a big NBA guy, but I'm sure you were following the Pistons and Lakers series at that time. And just how much, for people that maybe don't remember, it's been a while now, 16 years going on, Kobe and Shaq dominated the pro landscape at that time.
Well, I do indeed follow the NBA daily. Just not at the passion level of intercollegiate athletics, but to your point, yeah, I mean it's almost like the NBA is kind of like a reality series, and that's why people sometimes engage the NBA even without following the sport that much, because of the individuals. This kind of relationship that was contentious between Shaq and Kobe. And all these guys, if you will, in the NBA are first name references. Michael, Kobe, Shaq. That's just kind of the way the sport is. And I just remember about Kobe Bryant. This goes back to, he was my kind of player in this regard. I like these smooth as silk kind of guys. Goes back to a guy before your time, Ryan. Walter Davis played for the Phoenix Suns. They called him the Greyhound. He was so smooth and stride. And this was the kind of guy that Kobe was. I wasn't a Lakers fan, but I marveled at that, once again, that ability to combine work ethic and sheer talent, and overcoming that setback, that misjudgment that took place in Denver. That was flat out a misjudgment. I mean, you can say he was acquitted, but he did obviously something wrong there, and you still have time to make good in your life. The other resonating message from this whole thing, and this is what I think the bottom line of this whole thing is, Ryan, what people are calling their adult kids, like I was yesterday, and just hugging and reaching out to people. This resonates beyond sports, and sports is a huge microcosm, a metaphor of life, is that life is so freaking short. It really is. It's so fragile, and it's so temporary. And I think that's what really has jolted this story on Kobe Bryant, and it's taken it to the lead story on ABC Nightly News and NBC and CBS and wall-to-wall coverage this morning as well. This is one of those moments that you remember where you were when you found out he had passed away.
Yeah, because you mentioned earlier, and I mentioned it online as well, what are the big iconic deaths that compare to this in sport? Roberto Clemente would be one, because it was so unexpected at the time that it happened. And Walter Payton was a big name, yet we knew he was suffering from cancer at the time that he passed away. And as tragic as that was, it was not entirely unexpected. This was out of the blue. Nobody saw it coming. Kobe's a very young, healthy, vibrant young man at the age of 41. And not only to have his life snuffed out, but to lose his daughter in that as well. And to think of those final moments and terror and what that must have been like for those two together, for the husband and wife with their daughter together, for the mother and her daughter together, for the pilot, for the coach, for these 9 people, for this to happen. It's terrible to even think about, but the aftermath of this will have long-reaching implications. Kobe Bryant will be memorialized, no doubt, throughout the rest of this NBA season in various ways, and gone too soon at the age of 41. You're listening to the Great Lakes Divide podcast with Bluebelly Tom Crawford. I'm Ryan Schuling. Look back at the life of Kobe Bryant, his impact on basketball, because of, again, the impact that it had on college basketball players of this day, of this age. And over the weekend, we saw a couple of games that we'll reflect on now. Illinois going to Michigan, winning in Ann Arbor 64-62, and Michigan State going on the road, getting a victory at Minnesota 70-52. We'll start with the Wolverines, and we'll start with head coach Juwan Howard, talking about Isaiah Livers and him re-aggravating that groin injury in a scary moment for Michigan fans watching, because they knew about it coming back. He had just suited back up, gotten healthy for this game. he awkwardly kind of flies through the air, gets fouled, and you saw when it happened, you're like, no, not again. Here's what Juwan Howard had to say about that moment where he realized that Isaiah Livers had re-injured himself.
Well, you can just see the silence, not only just from the crowd, but from our bench. All the players looked at Isaiah as he fell to the floor. First thing when I saw it, I thought it was probably his wrist. Then I noticed he sort of like grabbed that area near where he was injured previously. So, unfortunately for him, no one really deserved to be hurt, but that's happens. It happens in sports. So, our guys band together like brothers. Said that, of course, we're going to do it for them, win this ball game. That's the beauty of having a locker room of guys who are truly a close-knit family. And as a coach, that's something that I get a little teary-eyed. Seeing our players are so all in, fighting for one another, care for each other, rejoicing each other's success. I'm just fortunate to have a group like this.
Also, teammate David DeJulius, we read his tweet about Kobe Bryant a little bit earlier on. One of the future leaders of this team, if he's not already in that role right now, talking about the emotion of that moment when Isaiah Livers went down and what these guys were facing without, again, their teammate who had fallen.
We got a lot of energy going to the game. Just have our brother back with us. Isaiah got a bright future, and we put everything on the line just to be back with his brother. Like I told him after the game, thank you. We appreciate you. We have your back because we know you don't have ours.
What was the mood like when he went out in the second half there?
Air out of. You know you got someone who care about the game, who's a better person than he is a basketball player. To see him go down again, it's unfortunate.
So as we bring back Tom Crawford for this one, Tom, I watched this game. I heard the silence of the fans as they were watching on, seeing and hoping that Isaiah Livers would be okay. Now, to Isaiah's credit, he tried to come back and shoot through this thing and play through this thing, and he played at the end with the inbound pass from the baseline for Michigan's final possession. But just what you took away from this and watching it, you sent me those sound clips about Juwan Howard and David DeJulius, how they handled it, how the players are reacting to Isaiah Livers, and what the prognosis is at this point. What do we know and what do we not know?
Well, I'm going to go back to the roughly the 15-minute mark of the second half. Well, actually, prior to that, there was a moment when, obviously the player introduction of Isaiah Livers and the reaction to that, just the energy in the building. You could see the energy, the body language of the players. That Michigan really ramped things up. And from as far as intensity of level of play, and that was his presence, and we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, but that went during that injury. I was sitting right in front of the same injury they had in the Presbyterian game. It was literally a duplication, going in for a dunk, a contested dunk where he's knocked off, off balance, and he hits the floor. I first thought it was his wrist, but I could see him grabbing that area, and then in this whole silent Crisler Arena where people were covering their mouths in disbelief, he kneels down and slaps the floor that would echo through Crisler Arena. It was unbelievable moment, and just seeing the players, the reaction to that. He is a central fabric of that team. There's no question about that. We knew that going in. He's 6'7". He's 230-pound athlete. He's a rebounder. He's a defender. He's the best outside shooter that Michigan has. And to have him come back, fight his way back, and then have this happen again, and the uncertainty that looms forward was pretty compelling stuff. And back to what I was talking about in the post game, why I sent those clips, one of David DeJulius, and the same one, and I did not share one, but I spoke with Franz Wagner. The tears in the eyes of these guys. David DeJulius is a very a deep young man, very emotional. I love that kid. They were crying. I didn't realize. I did and I didn't, but the emotional connection that team has with Isaiah Livers was really revealing, and that's where the uncertainty moving forward, if he plays, if he doesn't play, or how he plays, and just the jolt of having him not be 100% down the stretch is really going to be interesting to see. Tuesday night with Nebraska, huge game, Ryan. Where do they have the energy that they had in the Illinois game, or they just fall back to that flat they played at Penn State? That's going to decide where the season could go.
Livers had his impact on this game in just 20 minutes of action with 7 points, 5 rebounds. How about this? Michigan out-rebounds Illinois and Kofi Coburn 37-34. Coburn largely frustrated in this game. The Wolverines decided to hedge and double down and get him flustered. He only had 5 points and 3 boards in 30 minutes before fouling out. So, Tom, I'm going to start right there. If I had told you that the Wolverines would hold Kofi Coburn to just 5 points and 3 rebounds, I would have thought not only would you take that, but that Michigan would win this game. Why did they not?
And why don't I throw another caveat? 2 turnovers for Michigan. Think about that. If you had told me they were going to out-rebound Illinois and only commit 2 turnovers, I'd pencil in that W. Well, I'll tell you why. First of all, and it's all too revealing here. The 3-point beyond the arc, 4 of 17, but the fact that they missed 9 free throws. They went 0 for 5 down the stretch. You could say it 0 for 6 because Austin Davis missed the front end of a 1-and-1. So to close out the game, and when Franz Wagner, who is, you would say, one of their better free throw shooters, probably their best, gets fouled by Kofi, he fouls out of the game, and he can close it out with, he's got a 2-shot foul, he misses them both. I knew they were cooked. I just said this is not going to happen, and it didn't happen. And then when Ayo Dosunmu, I thought Xavier really had blanketed him, and that just shows you how good Ayo Dosunmu is, and it also shows you when you're having a height advantage. I don't care how good of a defender you are. If you have a height disparity, the guy is still going to nail it, and he's one of the best in the Big Ten.
So Michigan, the free throw shooting, no doubt, down the stretch was maddening. If they just hit maybe half of their free throws, this game's over. The Wolverines
hit 1.
Yeah. The Wolverines had a 62-60 lead on a David DeJulius jumper here with about 2:25 remaining, and yet they could not hold that lead. Illinois gets a tremendous performance out of Ayo Dosunmu. This is a guy that hit a couple of threes, but was really their go-to guy on offense. As you looked at the game that he had, what was not happening defensively, Tom? Because, again, this was the reverse of what we've seen from Michigan in the past. They had defended the perimeter well and guards well. It was in the post where they were getting eaten alive. That did not happen in this game. What was it about Dosunmu, the game that he had, that Michigan was not able to stop?
Well, it's like, pick your poison. They were pretty much sifting their help defense down low, and that surrendered. So, Xavier was pretty much was having to man up this guy, and he's a terrific player. And I talked about the height disparity as well. It reminded me a little bit of what happened in the Oregon game with their outstanding guard. Illinois is a really, really good team. And I'm going to tell you something else, Ryan, about Illinois. And I love this Brett Underwood. I think he's a great motivator. I just like everything about him. You remember last year's Illinois team? They played so freaking hard, and they came up short. And they were a team nobody wanted to play, but they were not that good from a win-loss standpoint. You add one player here, a Kofi Coburn, a dominant player, a cross between an Akeem Olajuwon and a Shaq a little bit, a college version thereof. What a difference it makes, along when you have guys like Kipper Nichols back and Trent Frazier back and some of the other guys back, Georgie, and some of these cats that have the experience. You knew they were going to be good, and they are good. Are they as good as Michigan State? Probably not, because I think Michigan State's going to protect home court the length of the season. But they're a close second. And so it wasn't a bad performance by Michigan, but Dosunmu is just a big-time player.
Brendan Quinn said online, I saw this and it stuck with me in answering Michael Spath, another one of our colleagues that hosts the show WTKA 1050 AM down in Ann Arbor, kind of mocking him, saying there's no must-win games in January. And while I'll agree for one game that's true, for Michigan, there's a collection now here of 4 losses in a row. You go back to the home win against Iowa. That was early December. They are 3-7 since. They are 1-7 against Power 5 conference teams, and that was a double overtime win at home against Purdue. And in these 4 straight losses, yeah, they lost 2 on the road, 1 at Minnesota, 1 at Iowa, but then back-to-back losses at home against Penn State and Illinois. Those almost count double because you got to hold serve. Wolverines unable to do that. And in so doing, I do think they make a January game a must-win at Lincoln, Nebraska against the Cornhuskers. This is one of 2, you could call them bottom feeders in the Big Ten that has 12 teams still in the hunt for an NCAA tournament bid. Northwestern is not. Nebraska is not. This is a 7 o'clock start time, Eastern time. That's Tuesday night on ESPNU. And do you disagree then, Tom? At least at this point, with what we're dealing with, Michigan 11-8. They're on the fence. They're 2-6 in conference, very much on the bubble for an NCAA tournament bid. Is this a must-win for Michigan Tuesday night at Nebraska?
Well, I hate that term, must-win, because if you don't win it, what happens? Do you quit? Do you turn in your equipment? What do you do? I mean, I look at it this way. It's like bullets in the gun. You have 10 losses max you can have in the Big Ten. If you have 10 losses, and they have 6 right now, so they have 4 misfires still in the chamber. But you got to be, solicitous on how you're going to use those things, those bullets. And Nebraska's a huge game because it can be a defining game, Ryan, because they gave up a home game. This is nauseating. Next Saturday, they're not playing. Rutgers is a home game on Saturday. However, it's played at MSG. Which is a Michigan home crowd, and they like to promote the Michigan alumni, Michigan basketball program to the alumni base. So they move that. So they're, in essence, playing Rutgers twice on the road. And this isn't your father's Rutgers. This is a present Rutgers. And they're really, really good. Mm-hmm. They're the 4th best team in the Big Ten, arguably. So, yeah, this Nebraska game is critical. There's no question about it, because they got to get some confidence. In particular, John Teskey has got to get some defensive competence and even in post-competence offensively to turn this thing around. I still think they have a shot of getting a Big Ten tournament bid, but they got to go 10-10 to do that. And that's problematic with that schedule up. Are they going to beat Michigan State at Crisler? I seriously doubt it. Are they going to win at Maryland? Seriously doubt it. But there's a lot of winnable games in there if they get their act together and bring the energy that they had at Crisler on Saturday.
Yeah, I like that analogy you had. Okay, so let's say they have 4 more losses to spare at tops right now. You don't want one of those to be Tuesday because you're right. They've got a home game against Michigan State. That's going to be problematic to begin with. They're at Rutgers. They're at Purdue. They're at Maryland. That's 4 trouble games right there. The neutral court game against Rutgers is essentially leaning a home game. That's not very far from Piscataway to Madison Square Garden. That's a very good Rutgers team under Steve Peichel, as you point out. So you're looking at wins and losses, and what's the leeway here? There's not a lot of margin for error. Therefore, I believe this is a must-win game. If Michigan goes into Lincoln and let's say they lose, that's their 5th straight loss. They drop to 11-9, 2-7 in conference. I think just psychologically, Tom, they need this win, a pelt on the wall, if you will, to go into that Rutgers game to start the month of February on a positive note with some confidence, because if they're going in on a 5-game slide, a Rutgers team that's playing better than ever we've ever seen them in the Big Ten, this is something that could be a snowball going downhill. And again, the problem of Isaiah Livers, and I want to get your final thought on his injury, because during the post game, the comments that we heard from Juwan Howard, they said it was not necessarily directly related to his previous injury. Isaiah Livers himself, however, seemed to counter that and say that it was. What are we looking at here with Livers? And we've seen life without him. It ain't good for Michigan. Do they have any kind of shot if Livers is out for an extended period of time?
Look, I don't have any medical background in sport, in the sports med world, but I keep using this analogy, and I think it's good. I equate it to the high ankle sprain. It's one of those injuries that is so susceptible, the pulled groin, to re-aggravation. Just in the way you position your body, and you can't live life paranoid, and you can't play basketball paranoid. I mean, you might as well not be out there, so you can't go gingerly and approach the game. And Isaiah Livers is not that kind of guy. Yeah, if by some miracle that he fights through this injury and becomes a productive guy, he is a really impactful player that I don't think people realize. And it goes back to his one of the biggest problems Michigan's had is communication on defense, and he is the ultimate communicator. Listen, I interviewed this dude when he was a senior in high school. I felt like I was talking to a 30-year-old. They had just beaten East Lansing in the regionals, and then when he lost, I talked to him after the game, after they had lost to Xavier Tillman's Grand Rapids Christian team over here at the Don in Lansing, and the maturity of this guy is off the scale. One of my all-time favorite players, and I'll tell you what, the fact that his teammates are hurting so bad because of him. They feel bad for him, and part of their whole challenge is they're going to have to divorce themselves from that sympathy part of them and focus on what they have to do and play for him and try to get this team back to the NCAA tournament. And that's a challenge right now because that team was emotionally jolted. Juwan talked about the tears in the locker room, and I saw tears, two guys crying, breaking up at a press conference at Crisler in the media room. I've never seen that before.
Xavier Simpson with 17 points in this game to lead the Wolverines. We mentioned Livers having the 7-5 before he had to depart, and he tried to come back, and we'll see if maybe he's able to go at Lincoln, although I have my doubts in that. And it's a game that Michigan should be able to win despite it being on the road. It would be their first true road win of the season without him. Franz Wagner had 12, as did John Teske, but both of those players were each 1 of 6 from 3. That's got to change. We've been saying that and then ringing that bell now for several games, basically the whole season for Michigan. Didn't get a whole lot elsewhere in scoring other than David DeJulius with 7 off the bench. So as we look at the three-point shooting, you look at life without Livers, maybe the contributions we've talked about with David DeJulius coming in off the bench or perhaps even starting in this game. If it's Wagner, if it's Teske, if it's Eli Brooks, who once again disappeared in this game, only had 4 points, 6 rebounds in 31 minutes, Tom, who needs to pull the most slack? What is lacking from this Michigan team that needs to snap out of it in order to help the Wolverines lift up and out of this and get a win on Tuesday night?
Well, it's the consistency or lack thereof of Eli Brooks. You can't go one day on, one day off. I mean, he's too vital of a player. I mean, when you give him 31 minutes and he's almost 32 minutes and he's giving you 4 points, that's not going to cut it. So he's the guy that I focus on. Franz, boy, he gets good looks. They all get good looks. The scheme, I talked about this last time, is good, but maybe defenses are saying, hey, listen, let them shoot. They can't hit it. Let them beat us from beyond the arc, or let us beat them at just inside the arc. They can't seem to shoot. And once again, 4 of 17. This is 5 of 23. Some of these shooting ratios have just been unbelievable relative to the old days under John Beilein, when 12 to 15 threes were often nailed down for the Wolverines. A different kind of team. Once again, a transition time for the Wolverines under Juwan Howard. I still love this team. I like this team. I like Juwan Howard. I like what I hear post-game. I feel really good, Ryan. I'm not one of those, oh, my God, I wish Beilein was here. I'm not one of those. I really feel good where this program is headed.
I do too. I think Michigan fans just got to ride out the storm. This is a transition year, and hopefully they can still get an NCAA bid. They fall at home 64-62 to Illinois, a team that is tied for first in the Big Ten, so there's no shame in this loss, but Michigan needs wins of any kind, and their next opponent, they also fell at Rutgers. This was a tough game for the Scarlet Knights. They're not used to playing as the favorite, as the hunted, as the team with their targets on the back at the rack. They were able to hold off Nebraska 75-72, but in the few games that I've watched the Cornhuskers this year, this was the best one that they played. Cam Mack had 19 points. That's a name to watch out for on Tuesday night in Lincoln. But Nebraska 7-12, 2-7 in Big Ten play. Again, a game Michigan not only should win, they need to win this game. And once again, that'll be a Tuesday night affair on ESPNU, 7 p.m. tip-off time for the Wolverines and the Cornhuskers. Once again, you're listening to the Great Lakes Divide podcast, brought to you by the Record Lounge in Rio Town with Tom Crawford. I'm Ryan Schuling. Now turning to the barn in Minnesota, Williams Arena, where the Golden Gophers had beaten the Wolverines not that long ago, and they are fighting for their tournament lives as well. But Michigan State largely in control of this game start to finish. They took a 30-22 lead into the half and continued pedal to the metal to go out the rest of this game to a 70-52 victory. Another strong performance, a double-double from Xavier Tillman. He had 17 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 block shots. Tom Izzo shook up the starting lineup, I think much to his benefit and credit. Malik Hall gets in there along with Rocket Watts, and Watts continues to shine in stretches, in spurts, in sparks. I think he can do more. I think there's more left in the tank, and he'll get there. It's just exciting to watch his development now that he's fully healed from that ankle injury. He had 10 points in 28 minutes in a starting role, one of 3 double-digit scores, along with, again, the usual suspect, Cassius Winston, who had 18 points to lead Michigan State. He was solid from the field, 7 of 14, 3 of 5 from 3, including some big-time daggers at key points in this game. He had 8 assists, only 1 turnover. That was a number I kept an eye on throughout this game as well. 11 total turnovers for Michigan State. And the Jekyll and Hyde case continues for Aaron Henry. He had 4 turnovers, a couple of those very careless, but he had 4 steals, 4 rebounds. He had 9 points. He looked a little bit more confident with his shot and just continues to be kind of this under construction work in progress for Michigan State. And they shot 47% from the floor. Not bad. 7 of 17 from 3. You'll take that at 41%. They hit their free throws. They out-rebounded Minnesota 39-35. And Daniel Oturu, another one of these tremendous bigs in a renaissance year for 5s, for centers in the Big Ten. He, along with Kofi Coburn, Illinois, and Luka Garza for Iowa, and Xavier Tillman for Michigan State. Oturu is one of those really solid front court players. Kind of had a typical game for him, which I guess you'll take if you're Michigan State. He had 19 points, 6 rebounds, was trouble down low, and when he got in a position, they let him play physical, but he did get in foul trouble. They called him for some here down the stretch. I thought that was key for Michigan State. Minnesota did not shoot well from 3 at all. They were 5 for 28 in this game, including 1 of 7 from Marcus Carr and just 3 of 9 from Gabe Kalshore. That's kind of like his sweet spot bread and butter shot. He would finish with 15 points and 3 made threes, but a woeful afternoon for Peyton Willis, the guard for Minnesota. He did not hit a single shot. He did not score a single point. He took 5 threes, missed them all. And Michigan State defensively, especially on the backcourt players for Minnesota, got the job done. Michigan State with the 18-point victory. And again, let's start here, Tom, where Tom Izzo is armed with information. We mentioned from the top of the podcast here that Kobe Bryant had been killed in the helicopter crash, but he elected not to tell his team this before the game. I think it was a very prescient move. This guy that's worked with young men his entire life, of course, as a coach, his entire adult life. You can go back to the 80s when he was a grad assistant for Judd Heathcote. Had the better judgment to say, you know what, I'm going to wait until after the game to jar them with this news. And it definitely seemed to pay off. As Michigan State, you could tell by the way they were playing. They were loose. They were confident. They were aggressive. They got out of the gate with a lead rather than the big deficits we saw them accumulate down at Purdue, 19-4, at Indiana, 18-4. As you watch this game, what was different about Michigan State on the road in this contest as you saw it?
Well, yeah, I concur on the Tom Izzo judgment, and that's where experience and just incredible common sense comes into play as far as holding off on divulging about Kobe Bryant. Yeah, this was predictable. We talked about this last week. I mean, I looked at this Bloomington, Minneapolis thing, Indiana, Minnesota as a split for Michigan State, which was just fine for them because of their position and just their ability to win home court games moving forward. If they had won in Bloomington, I thought they might lose in Minneapolis, one or the other. So when they hopped on the plane and went to Minneapolis, without going back to East Lansing in this kind of business trip mentality, we're not letting this slip away. We all knew that Michigan State would win this game and win it convincingly. And Aaron Henry, to me, Ryan, he's going to be one of those flat-out stoppers. He really impresses me as a defender, let alone his ability to score. And I've never seen a guy who has, as a lefty, has such a strong right hand. And you know, in traffic, authoritatively. A marvelous outing, I thought, for Aaron Henry. That stood out for me. And just the other thing is Malik Hall and Rocket Watts. I love those two in the starting lineup and bring Aaron Henry off the bench. This is marvelous. This works. This worked for Michigan with Isaiah Livers a couple years ago, bringing him off the bench. It's a very productive – you don't have to have – you can still get 25 minutes of play without starting. But I think Aaron Henry, when you come off the bench, you are a contributor, not a provider. There's a different mindset, and I like that position for Aaron Henry. And I would go with that starting line. Malik Hall, Rocket Watts, freshmen, but they're playing like solid sophomores right now, Ryan.
Could not agree more. And you just get the feeling if Michigan State can pull it all together. Now, Henry's one of those. I agree with you. Defensively, he was great in this game. 70-52 win at Minnesota. The 4 turnovers concern me. And again, a lot of times they're careless. It's like he's not dialed in entirely for every minute that he's on the floor. He played 25 in this game. But if he can get to that point, and yeah, he observes the game. That's something Tom Izzo said about why he put Aaron Henry on the bench. He wanted him to kind of take in the game, soak it in, see what's going on, and then go in, make his personal adjustments, and play his game. I want Aaron Henry to look for his shot. If he's open, shoot it. Don't hesitate. Take the ball to the basket. Be aggressive. He's a very unselfish player. He's had a lot of assists for his position, albeit only 2 against Minnesota, but cut down the turnovers, stay dialed in and focus. I think he's okay. Kithier is another one that has his wires crossed right now, and I really can't understand it because he's a very intelligent player, high basketball IQ, knows where to go on the floor, is a good defender, a good kind of post offensive player, can run pick and roll. He just doesn't seem to be in sync right now. He had 13 minutes played, still accumulated 4 points, only scored 2, and a lot of fans on Twitter expressing their frustration. I'm playing the long game with Thomas Kithier. I still think he has an important role to play on this team as a power forward and that he can get the job done. It just hasn't been there for him lately. He's in a bit of a funk. I don't know if it's mental, but he's got to get his confidence back, and that'll come in time. I think with minutes, not as a starter, but bringing him out the bench as well as Henry, I think those are good places for them because getting back to your point, Tom, Malik Hall, Rocket Watts, what I love about these 2 freshmen is they don't play with any sort of fear or hesitation. Rocket Watts, there's a sequence where Aaron Henry had the ball in his hand twice in this game and shot clock violations occurred where, again, I don't think he's being selfish enough. When it's getting down to 5-4 on the shot clock, look for your shot and take it or attack the basket. And when that happened, Rocket Watts comes in, immediately looks for his shot, knocks it down. Again, this is a kid that's continuing to grow in confidence and aggressiveness. He's got that bit of a swagger. He's got that crossover step back 3 that I love from him. And then Malik Hall, this guy, the athleticism, the size, the footwork, the 6 rebounds in this game. And the sky's the limit, I think, for either one of these 2, Tom. And we might see their best come March. These are 2 guys, as Tom Izzo always says, the best thing about freshmen, they become sophomores, but for Tom Izzo, they become sophomores really in the month of February, where they've gotten those games under their belt, and now they're ready for prime time. I agree with you. I think Rocket Watts, Malik Hall, they're ready. It's time to ride them.
Yeah, that and then I think when we get down to that off the bench mentality, if Tom Izzo, kind of doubles down on this and brings Aaron Henry off the game the next outing, these outings with Northwestern and Wisconsin, and see how that goes. I think that's smart. So there's your starting 6, if you will. Kithier, the 7th guy, and then Julius Marble might be the 8th guy, and then draw the line there. Marcus Bingham is checking out. I don't know what's wrong with this dude, and we were talking last night. We think this is going to be one of those transfer situations. He looks lost out there. He's so freaking skinny, too. Michigan State is a physical team down low. You got Xavier Tillman, who just delivers, double-doubles seemingly every game. Gabe Brown, solid. We talked about Hall, Watts, and Winston. No need to say about them. And then once again, then you go with Kithier and Henry, Kithier, Marble, and there it is. That's what you need, an 8-man rotation. And other than that, it's mop-up time.
I still think you could stretch to possibly 10 with the inclusion of Foster Loyer, who, again, he did not have a big impact on this game. And it seems like whenever Cassius goes out, things start falling apart at the seams a bit in transition, whether it's defense or even in offense off a turnover. The game can turn, and they just need Foster Loyer to give him 8-10 minutes of solid play where the bottom doesn't fall out to give Cassius a breather.
But you don't get it. You don't get it, Ryan, and I don't think you are going to get it when you're dealing with the top five or six teams in the Big Ten, or virtually any Big Ten team. It works very well against Western Michigan, no problem. But it doesn't work with Foster against a higher caliber talent.
It doesn't,
in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you, Tom. And here's the thing. Again, if he could just come in, I'm talking that under 12 timeout to the under 8 timeout, right in the middle of each half, and just spell Cassius for a few minutes. It could be 2 to 3 even. How much better Cassius is going to be down the stretch if you can give him that. Now, maybe that's handing off the duties to Rocket Watts, the combo guard. But he's so much better, Rocket, coming off the ball where he can handle if he wants to, or he can spot up and shoot and step back and everything else that allows him to when he's playing at the 2, when he's playing at the shooting guard position, as he does in the starting lineup alongside Cassius Winston. So I don't know what they're going to get out of Foster Loyer going forward. That was a guy a lot of people pointed to with Rocket Watts coming in, that maybe Foster Loyer would be one to transfer out. I still don't see that happening. And as far as it goes with Bingham, I've always really liked this young man. Going back to his high school games when I could see him play and developing an outside shot, I think there's a lot of Adrian Payne in him, a lot. And if he can become more of a consistent offensive presence, but he can't worry about that right now. And I think that's maybe where he's at, Tom. He wants to be this dynamic all-around player, involved in the offense. Maybe just embrace the role as a shot blocker, rebounder, defender. If he can get those things going, then his offense can feed off that part of his game. He only played 5 minutes in this contest against Minnesota. Now, there was talk about an illness for Michigan State maybe in this game, and that might explain something. I'm not sure if Marcus was one of those players that was ill, but regardless, I'm with you. I mean, if they're going to scale it down to an 8-man rotation and it doesn't include Bingham, I don't like their long-term chances. This is a big with 5 fouls who's rangy, who's got shot-blocking ability. They are much better with Marcus Bingham contributing than not. And I would hope, again, that he finds his stride that he has lost, apparently, as you talked about on Press Pass on Sunday night.
Well, he needs to get to the Brody, the all-you-can-eat cafeteria at the Brody complex and hit about 5 or 6 meals per day. I mean, I'm serious. He just doesn't match the physical demands down low, and because of it, he's getting like 5 minutes a game. So I disagree. I think Rocket Watts needs to get time at the point, and not to already look ahead to next year, but he could be your point guard next year. He could be the guy. Cassius is leaving the house at the end of the year. Yeah. Who's going to be the point? It's not going to be Foster Loyer. Not at all. So you got to look down the road.
So you're not buying a Foster Loyer Rocket Watts starting backcourt for 2020-21?
No.
Short answer. Okay. All right.
No, I don't see it. And Foster Loyer is a great kid. I remember interviewing him a couple of times after a couple of Clarkston High School, championship games. He's way ahead of his age and all that stuff, and that's all good. But I just don't see the physicality. I see glimpses here and there. But when it's really crunch time in high caliber competition, I'm not seeing it so far, and I don't anticipate seeing it.
Michigan State returns home for a 6:30 tip-off on Big Ten Network. That'll be Wednesday night with Northwestern coming to town. It's an off year, to say the least, for the Northwestern Wildcats as they fall again at home. They hung tooth and nail with a very wobbly Ohio State team that really desperately needed this win, and the Buckeyes got it. 71-59, the final score there. Northwestern falls to 1-8 in Big Ten play, 6-13 on the season overall, while Ohio State improves to 13-7 and 3-6 in the Big Ten. One other game, it was a great one on Sunday afternoon as number 17 Maryland went in and did what Michigan State could not do, and that's win in Bloomington Assembly Hall against Indiana. What a game this was. Maryland in control through one half of play. They were up 9. Indiana stormed back, made it a contest, went back and forth down the stretch. But Maryland too much, with Jalen Smith scoring 29 and raking in 11 rebounds as well. Terrapin 77, Hoosiers 76. So as we look at the Big Ten standings, again, this gauntlet, you got Illinois and Michigan State tied atop at 7-2. And of course, Michigan State has beaten Illinois head-to-head. Maryland and Rutgers, that's right, Rutgers check in 3, tied for third there at 6-3. Iowa's 5-3. You got Indiana, Wisconsin tied at 5-4. Minnesota now 5-5. They are very much squarely on the bubble, along with Purdue in the Big Ten. You know, teams that could give the Big Ten as many as 12 bids in the tournament, but you got to believe there's going to be some attrition here, some cannibalism, if you will, because they got to go head to head. You know, teams like Ohio State and Michigan fighting for their tournament lives as well. Penn State 4-4 in conference play, Purdue 4-5, Ohio State 3-6, and there's Michigan at 2-6, just ahead of Nebraska. And perish the thought, Tom, but if the Wolverines go into Lincoln and find a way to lose that game, Nebraska leapfrogs them in the standings, and Michigan would be all alone in 13th place out of 14. Again, we talked about this coming out of Atlantis. None of us saw this coming. None of us saw Michigan, teetering on the brink of having it all fall apart. They lose livers. That's one big part of it. But final thought now is, again, Michigan, they got to find a way to turn their season around with or without livers. They're 0-5 on the road. What is it going to take for them to go on the road and get the kind of performance they need to get a win?
Well, they got to knock down shots, but I want just a reality check here a little bit. I'm trying to think what year was 2011. Michigan was 1-6 going to the Breslin. They beat Michigan State, and they went on to get to the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
And they I think they lost a real tight game to a formidable opponent in the second round. It's just one of those. It's just one of those years that you have to look at the big. It's a long season. We're still sitting here at January 27th, and I think they can do it. Yeah, a little fool's goal with a win over Carolina at the Battle for Atlanta. It's not that good of a team, but they did beat Gonzaga, which so far is the biggest get of wins in college basketball, and their power rating is still pretty high. And in terms of rankings, they're still in the top 30. So it's not all for naught here. And even say Isaiah Livers doesn't play the rest of the game, there's enough parts there if they can start hitting some of these shots that they can compete and to try to wiggle their way in the tournament. I said the magic number is 10 in Big Ten play without having to win any games at Indy in the Big Ten tournament. And they could even go 9-11, win a couple games at the tournament, and still get in, at least in the play-in game in Dayton.
Final time, the game's coming up. Michigan at Nebraska, 7 p.m. Eastern time on ESPNU. That's Tuesday night. And then Michigan State in action the next night, Wednesday night coming up. That's a 6:30 Eastern time tip on Big Ten Network, home against Northwestern. Tom and I will reflect on those two games coming up later this week. You can check out the podcast, not only online, greatlakesdivide.squarespace.com, but tell your friends as well. Available on every podcast platform, from Spotify and iHeart to Spreaker on down the line, Apple Music. It's available everywhere. We appreciate your support, and of course, we appreciate the support of the Record Lounge in Rio Town. The sounds going out you hear here. You can find this music and all the music you seek at the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Check them out, like them on Facebook, follow them on Twitter, give them a call, and go in person. Talk to Heather Frary and get your music needs met at the Record Lounge in Rio Town. Until later in the week, for Tom Crawford, I'm Ryan Schuling. Have a great week ahead, everybody.
Sorry, I've never told you all I wanted to say, and now it's too late to hold you, 'cause you've flown away, so far away. Never had I imagined I love